Hey, my name is Fletch. My YouTube channel is All Things Overlanding, and today I'm hanging out with Mark, and I'm just gonna kind of give you guys a walk around of my rig and talk a little bit about my background, kind of where I came from, how I got into overlanding, and then why I built this truck this way. So, this is a 2023 Nissan Frontier Pro4X. I'm a big Nissan person, so I've had several. I started out probably about 8-9 years ago with an 05 Xterra that I built up, put on 33s, and had a lot of fun with, but I made a lot of mistakes, spent a lot of money that I didn't need to spend. And I learned from that. And then I went to an 08 Frontier that was a Titan swap Frontier. If you're not familiar with Nissans, it basically means you take all the suspension stuff from a full-size Nissan Titan, put it underneath the mid-size Frontier, gives you more clearance, you can fit 35. So it was a big monster truck, but it got really bad gas mileage, had a lot of downsides. So then I finally kind of figured out what I want to do, and now I have the 23 Frontier. It has the 9-speed transmission, a better transmission for better fuel efficiency, but still a lot of benefits, nicer interior and all that stuff, and so I'm really, really happy with this truck. But what got me into overlanding actually was I watched a bunch of YouTube videos. Actually, YouTube got me into YouTube, and it got me into overlanding. I went there to search for Xterra off-roading. That's what I wanted to find. And when I searched for that, I just stumbled upon like Rogue Overland, which they have Nissan Xterras, and some other channels like that. And I'm like, these people are going off-roading and then they're camping out of their trucks. I love camping and I like off-roading. This is amazing. So that kind of, gave me the idea to build out an Xterra to do that thing, to go off-roading, but then also to be able to camp out of it. And again, like I mentioned, I made a lot of mistakes. So since then, again, I've come to this new truck, and after all those learnings, I started a YouTube channel maybe 3 or 4 years after I got the Xterra, started talking about newbie stuff and beginner gear and things like that because I didn't find enough content like that out there. And then since then, I started a Facebook group called Newbie Overlanders. It's growing every day. It's a really great resource because a lot of those big groups can be intimidating and the people are kind of bullies, right? So that's why I started Newbie Overlanders, was to let new people come in and ask questions without being beaten up. So if you're looking for that, I'm sure that Mark will put a link down below this video to the Newbie Overlanders Facebook group, but definitely join that if you have questions, or if you're more experienced and you're just tired of people bullying people and you want to come help, that's a great resource. So anyways, check that out. But my goal with the channel, with Newbie Overlanders, is just to help people get out and explore, kind of like Mark. Like if you haven't heard of overlanding, if you haven't tried it, if you're scared to go out, especially in like winter or summer, anytime, there's gear to handle all that stuff and you don't have to spend $1 million. So definitely recommend checking it out and starting with what you got, and then you can learn from there what you need to pick up. All right, so now let me just kind of walk you around the truck. I want to show you kind of what I've modified, what I've changed, what I've added to the truck. And I'll talk through a little bit of why I made those decisions, what I decided to do and why. So starting here at the side of the truck, one bad thing about the Frontier that I will say compared to a lot of these new competitors like the new Tacomas, the new Chevy trucks, is they don't have a ton of ground clearance. So I wanted to solve that, but I have a brand new truck, right? So I didn't want to do a lot of modification. It came with the Bilstein 5100 shocks, so I wanted to retain those. So there's actually an awesome Nissan company called All Dogs Off-Road that makes a ton of different suspension options for the Frontiers. This one is called the RC Killa Kit, which is basically, it is a longer coil in the front, but you retain your stock shocks, and you just take the top hat off, put the new coil on, bolt the top hat back down and bolt them back into the truck. And then in the rear, it's an add-a-leaf system. So again, retain the same shocks, get about 1.5 inches to 2 inches of lift out of it, which is really nice. And that allowed me to fit these 33-inch Kenda Cleaver RTs. If you're not big into tires or you don't know a ton about tires, there are a bunch of different options, but basically the basics of it are there are all-terrain tires, there are hybrid tires, and then there are MT tires. And I'm sure there are other types. I'm not a tire expert, but I had AT tires, all-terrain tires. I do like to do a fair amount of off-roading, and I found that the ATs just didn't have enough grip on those rocks and in those off-road situations. So I switched to MTs, made that mistake. As someone that also daily drives my truck, I was rolling around on MTs and it made a ton of noise. And the benefits of that, when I, even if I go out once a month, that's 12 times a year, but then the rest of the 99% of the rest of the time I have to ride around with these loud tires. So these Kenda Cleaver RTs are fantastic hybrid tire. They're a little more aggressive than an AT, but less aggressive than the MT. But they're really quiet on the road, but they also do really well off-road. So these were my selection. I've had these on the last couple trucks, and I really, really love the Kendas. They're also really budget-minded. So they're about a $230, $240 tire. So you can get all 4 of them for under $1,000 bucks, which is pretty nice. So that is suspension, that is tires. Looking here at the front, I've got ditch lights. These are co-light ditch lights. I like those quite a bit. They are a really budget option too. So one thing that you're going to probably notice as a trend or a theme as we go through this is I'm pretty budget minded. I've been doing this for a while now, and you know, you could spend $600 on a set of Diode Dynamics, or you know, there's a ton of different light manufacturers out there and they have really good products. Nothing bad about them to say, but these co-lights I've had on here for a year and a half. They've been through Wyoming, they've been through winter weather, everything. They don't leak. I have no condensation inside of them. They put out a ton of light, and they were about 80 bucks for the set. So the co-lights are a nice little ditch light. The brackets that I've got are Nylite brackets. They're about 20 bucks. So again, they don't bolt to anything, which on these new trucks, a lot of people require you to cut the fascia in there to get the ditch mount lights to fit. These actually just kind of clamp onto your hood with rubber covers so they don't hurt anything or chip your paint. And again, they've been on there for a year and a half too. So that gives you just a little bit of extra light to throw down the trail if you're off-roading, you know, at night or in bad conditions. That little antenna there is my Midland MXT275 Ghost antenna. It's just a hard-mounted GMRS radio, which is a great way to communicate with people. They do up to about 2 miles of range. So if you just want to be able to really easily chat back and forth with your convoy or your party, then the Midland stuff is really, really good, and it is worth the extra money, typically speaking. On the front here, I've got a Z1 off-road full bumper. It's called the Assault bumper. You'll notice my cut is a little high there. I did screw that up a little bit. I've got a video about it on the channel, so if you're looking to see what I did, but I made it look as good as I could. But the bumper itself is amazing. I actually clipped a tree with it about a week after I put it on. Would have just destroyed my driver's side fender, and the bumper just pushed me right off of it, and I kept going, no damage. So this thing's really beefy. It's got room for a winch, which I've got the open road, I think it's called the Panther 2S. It's got 2 wireless remotes plus a wired remote. It's a 13,000 pound winch, so I've pulled all kinds of Jeeps out with this and all kinds of other trucks, pulled myself out a couple times, so it's a fantastic budget-minded winch, probably about $350 winch, which again, I like budget stuff. I don't like spending $1 million bucks. Also in the bumper down here, I've got a Novesight 20-inch light bar. That thing is awesome. I wired it into my fog lights. So basically when I turn on my fog lights, I just leave them off all the time because I don't want to blind people on the road. But when I turn on my fog lights, my fogs come on and that 20-inch light bar comes on and it throws a ton more light in front of the truck, which is awesome. The cab rack is an experiment that I'm trying. It's a no drill option. So again, if you're not a Nissan person, there is the Nismo no drill rack, and then there are a bunch of drill racks where you have to drill holes in your roof of your brand new truck. But they all cost $800 to $1,200. This thing is about 280 bucks. It's from a company called T-Laps, T-L-A-P-S, and you can buy them on Amazon, you can buy them on eBay, but you just bolt it all together and it's basically just the same as the Nismo rack. The only complaint is the front wind fairing does vibrate a little bit at different speeds, so I've kind of solved that with a piece of weather stripping on the bottom there for now, but just strengthening that is one solution too, putting a bar behind it. But so it's a budget-minded option. There are trade-offs with budget-minded stuff, right? You may not get the best fit and finish, you may not get the best stuff, but if your goal is just to have something on top of the truck that you can throw some gear on top of, I didn't see the point in spending 4 times as much money on the Nismo version. So that's what I did for that. Looking at the top of the rooftop tent here, I've got 2 eco-worthy 100-watt panels up there, and those feed into a house battery. So I've got a dual battery setup, a 200 amp hour LiFePO4 battery, and then with these 200 watts, I can basically run my fridge, my WeBoost, all that stuff 24/7. As long as there's some sun, I can recoup that power. And I'm not even hooked up to the alternator, so I do it all through solar. But those stay up on top of the tent all the time. The tent itself is an open road. It's called a Peak Roof Series tent. This is a great tent and a great alternative to a lot of those other brands out there. This is about a $2,200 tent. So for a fraction of the price of, you know, some of the bigger names, it does have this X hinge down here at the bottom. And what that does is it frees up about 10 inches of space here. So instead of sleeping with your feet jammed into the wedge, you actually have a flat surface at the bottom. It also gives you about that 8 or 10 inches at the top there too. So you have more room to sit up, change, that kind of thing inside of there. But again, a really good budget-minded option. I also like that the awning goes all the way around, so it covers my side windows. Because I've camped in inclement weather quite a few times, and when you do that, you see really quickly that if you can't open your windows, you can't vent things. It gets really humid and uncomfortable really quick. So that's why I went with this style of tent with the sort of side awnings. And again, the budget price was a big attractor for me. On the side here, I've got the all-top Overland shower tent. This was an impulse buy on Amazon Prime Day. I think it was about 140 bucks, but it solves the problem of having to use the restroom somewhere, right? You've got a tent that you can shower in, or you could throw a toilet out, you can change in it, all that good stuff. And it's always on the truck And so part of the reason for that, to kind of pause here for a second and talk about why I've selected this sort of stuff, is I am very lazy. Like a lot of us, I'm very busy. And so I will, hit a weekend and all of a sudden my kid's swimming event gets canceled or something changes and my wife is like, hey, if you want to go camping, you can. The more stuff I have to remember, the more I have to remember to pack, the harder it is for me to get out, the longer it takes for me to get out. So I try and make my truck as ready to go as possible. So I just have to grab some food and maybe a small backpack. And then I hop in the truck and I've got everything that I need already on the truck. And you'll see more of that when we get into like the drawer system here at the back. But the All-Top is actually a really nice little budget shower tent. It's got a built-in LED light in there that you can plug into a battery so you can light it up. My wife loves it because she can change in there. If it's nighttime, she can see what's going on. It's got a roof on top of it too, so if it's raining or anything, you're covered. It's adjustable, so you can get it up to various heights or down if you're on a hill, that kind of thing. So that's a good little pickup. Supporting the rooftop tent here is my extrusion bed rack. This is a little bit more on the pricey side. So this is probably about a $1,500 bed rack, which isn't terrible, don't get me wrong, but there are cheaper alternatives out there. But what I love about the extrusion stuff is it's made out of extrusion, which is why it's called that, but you can mount stuff all over it. So, for example, I just mounted these chase lights back here right onto the stock hardware. This thing here is actually a slide. This will slide out and it's got my propane on the back, which is pretty inaccessible normally, but when you slide this out, then I can hook up a hose to it and I can cook right on the tailgate. During the winter, you'll see this black sort of plate here. This is actually a trolling motor mount. The other half of that is attached to my diesel heater. So when winter rolls around, I actually just slide the diesel heater in here, lock it down with a thumb screw. And then again, when I get to camp, I can slide this slider out. I can put my tube up into the tent. So I really try and focus on, again, having everything on the truck and being ready to go at any time. So that is that. This rack is awesome. They're super customizable too, and the guys at Extrusion are awesome. So if you ever want anything, I think if you hit them up and say, I want Fletch's model, if you have a Frontier, they actually know my specs because I have 3 bars on that side and just 2 on this side to support the slider. But then on that side, I haven't installed them yet, but I have they have gas strutted MOLLE panels. So they're actually going to be MOLLE panels that allow access from the side, but then allow you to mount gear on the outside. Again, I have them in my garage, but I have not had time to install them. So there on the back, I've got an OTC trash bag. The cool thing about this is this was actually on my old truck, but so it's got these 2 metal attachment points at the top, and that was meant for their proprietary system, which attaches to a spare tire. But in this case, again, because of the flexibility of the extrusion, I used the hardware from the extrusion. It fit perfectly, and I just put my trash bag inside there because I don't have a rear mount tire to mount a trash bag to. But then it's out of the wind, it stays inside there. I can put my trash in there. It's behind my fridge anyway, so it's unused space. So it takes advantage of that space that otherwise would be wasted. In front of that, I've got an IceCo APL 55. Now this is a fridge that I would definitely recommend if you are, more like full-time or you're doing a lot of overlanding. It's a true dual zone, but also when you remove the center section, it changes the display, goes into a single zone. So if you just want a fridge or a freezer, you can do that. So it's got a ton of flexibility, but this is on the pricier side. This is about an $850, $900 fridge. But IceCo has a ton of other options, like the JP50 is about a $500 fridge. So again, just do your research and think about what you want to do. I've been doing this for about 5 years before I spent the money and got the big fridge, right? So I started with an Alpacool back in the day for about $260 for a 58 quart. And that thing was great, and it lasted for a few years, and I sold it to a buddy, and he's still using it today. But again, the IceCo stuff is really well built. I will say I am a big fan of IceCo. I've been running their stuff for a couple of years now, and I'm on my 2nd fridge of theirs, again, only because I wanted to switch to the dual zone, and I'm doing this more. This is also a weatherproof fridge, so having the open bed rack, it's nice to have this back here and protected by the rooftop tent, but still, if it gets, you can see it's covered in dust and rain, water spots and things like that, but it does fine. It doesn't care that it's outside. Dust doesn't hurt it. It's got waterproofed, plugs and everything on it. This does sit on, and I'm a little proud of this, but I did a DIY tilt slide for this. So as you can see, it's really high, and I'm a tall guy, but it's still, I wouldn't even be able to see inside of the fridge. But what I basically did was I put a hinge right down here and a piece of wood on top of it, and then the fridge slide is attached to that. So when you slide this out, on the back are a couple of lashing straps or limiting straps that hold to some D-rings on the back of that. And then that allows me to tilt the fridge down so that I have full access to it. I can get into it really easily. And now I can see down in there, I can reach all my food. So it just makes it a little bit easier to use. But so stuff like that, right? Like you could go out and buy a, $1,500, drop down fridge slide, or there's all kinds of fancy, crazy stuff. But this is about $10, $15 worth of hardware and a piece of plywood that I had sitting around that I rhino lined to make it waterproof so I didn't have to worry about it, falling apart or corroding. And it's been on this truck for 1.5 years, and it was in my old truck for about a year before that. So it's doing great. But that is the fridge. I mentioned the chase lights already. Those are from Novasite also. Novasite makes some really good stuff. Some of their stuff is a little more on the pricey side, but their quality, in my opinion, is up there with some of the bigger brands. This in the center here is a strobe bar. That's from Nylite, about a $40 bar. But in like the dusty conditions in Wyoming, we had 4 of us in that convoy, and I mean, I kid you not, there was a guy behind me who was like, if you turn that light bar on, I'm gonna murder you. We got into the dust, I turned it on, he's like, thank you for bringing it. I'm so glad you have that, because I was about to rear end you and now I can see you perfectly. So, you know, visibility is important. Being able to be safe and see people in front of you is important. So that's why I've got the strobe bar up there. Then on top of the box here is a system called T-Mat. You'll see these little X's here, and this is really cool. They're typically, your typical installation for this is they're gonna give you a size that fits for your bed. And they've just got these little sort of channels on the side, and you connect it together almost like Legos, right? They just kind of connect together, but normally you just fit this in your bed. But because of my application, I've got this weird fridge up here and this drawer system. I actually kind of piecemealed mine together, but it's super flexible. You can do almost anything. I cut it, you know, with an angle grinder, and then I just made it fit like an L, but they have these plugs that fit down in here. So sometimes when I bring a chainsaw, I'll throw my chainsaw box up here, and then I'll use the T-Mat to sort of sandwich it in there, and you can do anything. You can do a Plano crate, you can do a propane tank, so it gives you a ton of flexibility for being able to mount different stuff on top of the box system. For the box system itself, built this out of 3/4 inch plywood. I'm probably about $200 into it. So again, there are a ton of purpose-built things like a deck system and those things. And again, nothing wrong with those products if you want to spend the money. But for me, I wanted more storage than a deck system, and I wanted something that would do what I wanted. And I like the idea of wood because then I can customize it. So on the inside here, I put these dividers, and I basically used friction slides on these. So there's no sliders or anything to get dusty or clogged up. Again, very inexpensive, about 30 bucks for all the material that I used for the sliders. But then you've got, you know, a divider here, and I used pocket holes. So I could unscrew these at any point. I can move these wherever I need to based on my gear. So I built it specifically to be able to hold the stuff that I wanted to hold. Another thing that I'm proud of, I like this idea, is I use these little, they're almost like MOLLE attachments with the bungee cord for a flashlight or whatever you want. I basically screw that into the side, and then these lights are rechargeable LED flashlights, but they have like a little light bar on the bottom of them. So you can turn them on. I haven't charged these things in forever. So I can light the drawer with them, but then I can also undo this clasp and I can take it out and use it as a flashlight around camp. But so just kind of a nice way to make things have dual purpose. I don't like to take things that I use for only one purpose. If you can use it for more than one, it saves you money, it saves you space. So I like having those flashlights that are removable, but also like a drawer light. So that is the drawers. All right, so we've opened up the drawers here and stuff, and I do want to talk just a little bit about usability and also reusability, right? So first of all, I like this drawer system, and I had a deck system before, which again was great, but there is some unused space, and because of the design of the drawers, they were a little tapered, so I didn't have anywhere near the space. I mean, I've got a ton of vertical space. This is basically like a 44 by 44 box, so there's room for, this is all my recovery gear. This is a jump start box. I've got a bunch of like freeze-dried food in here, a propane tank, toilet paper and stuff, bug spray, all that stuff down in here, a ton of electrical things, shower stuff, fire starting stuff, cups, bug repellent, I mean everything. This is all my awning stuff here, so if I want to stake down the awning, I've got all that hardware in there. I've got a hammer here for the hammering the stakes into the ground. On the other side here, and I'll get more into this thing here in a second, but I've got the Jetboil Genesis base camp setup, which is a little bit on the pricey side. Again, that one is not necessarily a budget piece of gear, but it is so much better than a lot of the other stoves out there and takes up so much less room that, in my opinion, that one's worth the money to spend on that thing. I do have this Black Pine folding toilet, which they do not make anymore, and I'm so sad about it because it's perfect. It folds down to about 1.5 inches thick, and it sets up to a full-size toilet and will support up to 300 pounds of weight. But little stuff like that, I mean, it's flat, it's easy to store. I just set it in there on top of this rigid box. And so it stores really small and takes up almost no room, which is always my goal with my build, because the more room you can save, the more stuff you can pack. The lighter it is, the better. This rigid box is actually my kitchen box. So I've got everything from, you know, toothpaste and mouthwash to all my kitchen stuff. Everything is in there. So whenever I need to cook, I can pop that whole box out, put it on my tailgate. I can pop the Base Camp Genesis out, or Jetboil Genesis Base Camp out on the back of the truck bed here and cook with it. As we mentioned earlier, this propane tank up here is mounted on the back of the slide, which again, normally would be pretty inaccessible, but you can see I've got the spout sort of turned backwards. So what I actually do is I have it turned that way for a reason, because then I can put my hose on it for my propane, hook it up to my stove on the tailgate here, and I can cook from it. So it's out of the way when I don't need it. Then when I get to camp, I slide this thing out, I can access it, I can cook. But so I'm trying to make use of the space as best as I possibly can. So speaking of reusability and kind of planning, on the sides here there is room, so this is another thing that I like over my old deck system versus like a flat panel with a small box that you can put stuff in. I can actually put like a full-size jerry can on the side, or a 3-gallon aqua brick I will do sometimes, but they actually fit in here just perfect, give me a ton of room. It's also a wooden box, so I can always put D-rings or mount things to the outside of it if I wanted to, but I like to have it just as open space for fuel and water and that kind of thing that I will just bring on a trip but don't use 24/7. But as far as reusability and stuff goes, again, I can pull these center sections out of here, I can move them wherever I need to. So if my gear changes with me, then I've got a really quick and easy way to adjust this box versus having to change out my gear completely and go to a different setup. Same with the T-mat. If I ended up taking my box out, which may happen at some point because I'm thinking of going to like a cap system just for security and weather purposes, then I could take that T-mat and I could put it in the bed of my truck and reuse it. So when you're thinking about doing your build, it's really easy to get excited about a piece of gear or see a video about a piece of gear and just go buy it. But if you don't think about like, is this going to be my final build? Is this exactly what I want? Have I gone 5, 10, 20 times and I've really figured out I love to cook, or I don't like to cook so I don't need as much cooking stuff, then you can make smart decisions about what you're going to buy, even if you change to a different vehicle. If I change to a Gladiator tomorrow, you know, like this is a 44 by 44 box, which is pretty standard for most of these 5-foot bed trucks. I could pretty much put that in just about anything. So again, try and think ahead. It's really easy to think short term, but if you really think about what you like and what you want to do, then you can make smart decisions and save yourself money and time down the road. So to kind of finish out the walk around here, kind of the last piece is my awning. I recently upgraded to this Top Oak. It's a 270 awning from Top Oak. Again, there are a ton of great options. Like I'm wearing the Rain Outdoors hat here, and Rain Outdoors makes some great products too. I actually hadn't heard of them before I bought this awning, but this is a $499 awning, and it has built-in lights, it has built-in legs, it's got Velcro on the side, so you could do a wall kit if you wanted to. I think the wall kit's about another $400, so it's not insignificant, but for $500, I've got 172 square feet of coverage, so it covers the entire side of my truck and all the way around the back, which is what I wanted because I have a pickup truck and I cook back here. So again, for a really budget price, it blocks out a ton of sun. It's a really well-made awning, and it's been great. So just to kind of wrap this all up, again, not that I'm any sort of super experienced, crazy overlander, right? Like there are a lot of folks that have gone more than me. That's why I view myself as a newbie quite a bit, and why I like to make newbie content. That's basically what I focus on, is the newer folks, because I feel like even after 5 years of doing this, I'm still pretty new at this, right? And you can never learn too much. Knowledge, I think, is one of the things that most of us forego. We'll watch a YouTube video, we'll get really excited, we'll go out and buy all the gear. You get out somewhere, you don't know how to use it. That's worse. Learn first, take as many classes at these, you know, we're at Overland Expo East right now. If you go to these expos, make sure to attend some of those classes on recovery, first aid, that kind of thing, the important stuff. Learn how to use your gear, learn what you're interested in, and then make your buying decisions based on that. That would be my advice for newer overlanders getting into the space. All right, so again, if you want to follow along with All Things Overlanding, it's allthingsoverlanding.com. I'm on YouTube. I have a podcast that comes out weekly. I've got a TikTok. I've got an Instagram. I've got all the things. So I'm sure there'll be links in the description down below. But I would love to have you as a subscriber.